comments through the chat. I've got that and I'm monitoring that as well. All right, so I'm Bhavik. Nice to meet everyone. Hope everyone's doing great. Wednesday, we're almost there. I was just telling my wife the other day that I never had classes on Fridays, and she was in pharmaceutical school, so that was like a foreign concept to me. So it was blowing her mind with that. I wish I didn't have anything to do on Fridays these days. All right, so the topic that we were going to cover today is digital transformation, not at the speed of light, and we'll get into a little bit of what that means. But as Professor Freidenberg was saying, I definitely want to make sure this is a bit of a collaborative session because I want to get a sense for, what is the thought of what you guys, digital transformation is what I do, which I hate saying that because I've got a love-hate relationship with it because it's such a buzzword and different people have different thoughts about what it means. So we'll dive into that a little bit. As far as the agenda for the presentation today, do a little bit of introductions, give you a sense for who I am, what company I'm with, as well as my journey from Bentley and beyond. We'll dive into, as I mentioned, what is digital transformation and have a little bit of a dialogue there. What are some approaches to digital transformation? And you'll see when we get to two-day delivery what we'll talk about there, and we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A as well. So with that, so I'm with a company called SEI Consulting. We were founded in 1992. We have over 500 consultants, and we're nationwide. Thank you, appreciate that. Getting a 4-hour workout, but that's okay. Yeah, so our whole model is we're kind of local consultants. So I used to be a road warrior once upon a time, and when I joined SEI, I kind of was able to focus on clients in the greater Boston area, which has been nice because I get to spend more time with Professor Freidenberg and get back to campus more often, which is definitely nice. But really, like the core of who we are, we're a management and technology strategy consulting company. And we're really focused on how business and technology meet, which is, for me, is what I'm particularly passionate about, because that was a lot of what I found really exciting and interesting as I was going through school at Bentley as well. And I think we do a great job here in kind of understanding not only the business side of things, but as we probably know, I mean, this is not a surprise to anyone. I mean, can anybody name a business that doesn't run on technology these days? And don't say juice stand, because I've got a Vitamix that has Bluetooth now too. So, but that's really the point, is that, technology is so pervasive, and that's really like the core of like why we do what we do. And when we think about digital transformation, a lot of what my company does is end to end, all the way from thinking about the analytics, the concept of what it is that you're doing. So when you think about any specific problem for digital transformation, it's thinking about, okay, well, why are we trying to implement technology? And that's, I think, a core question that's important to ask when we think about digital transformation. Yeah. All right, well, if somebody asks you to use an app, why are you using that app? What is the purpose of it? What are you trying to accomplish? And there's all these other things that go along with it that I won't dive into. But just to give you a flavor of all the things that are involved. I always find it helpful to understand folks' journeys. So just to share a little bit of my journey here, from Bentley and beyond. So I left off years because that'll date me. So just to give you a flavor of like the trajectory from a career perspective. So graduated from Bentley with a Bachelor's of Science in Marketing and Media Arts liberal studies major, which I recently learned that that's no longer going to be a thing soon. So there goes that. And then a CIS minor. From there, and actually, interestingly enough, I actually did an on-campus speaking panel that was hosted by Liberty Mutual and a couple other companies. And a recruiter approached me after that, and that's how I got my first job out of school from Bentley. And so I was in their technology development program and really focused on development. So I was actually a Java developer, which was really interesting, and really focused on further enabling cloud technologies in the insurance space. How do you go online and get a quote, online and actually get an insurance policy online? From there, moved over to a consulting company, Peloton Group, Did a lot of digital transformation, finance transformation, mobile strategy and analytics, and not just a lot of buzzwords there, but really a lot of what I did was helping clients improve some of their processes on the finance side of the house. So thinking about going from Excel and leveraging just purely Excel to more automation to closing the books, and really transforming those processes from a digital perspective there. Other things there were specifically around who likes mozzarella sticks? All right, yeah, if no one's hand goes up, then I'm like, all right, no one's listening. All right, so I had a customer who sold mozzarella sticks, and I'm not talking about you go to like Kroger and you buy a box of mozzarella sticks. We're talking about millions and millions of mozzarella sticks. And when you're selling millions and millions of mozzarella sticks, there's a lot of ingredients or science that goes into it. And so you need to understand, all right, well, how much core raw material and product do you have? But then when you're going and talking to the Walmarts and the other grocery chains of the world, you have to be able to have the quick conversations to understand what do they need, right? If they know that across a certain region, they're selling 1 million mozzarella sticks a month, and you need to be able to supply that demand, well, you need to be able to forecast and anticipate that raw material, the manufacturing, the production, et cetera. And if you think about doing that, we've got salespeople that are physically meeting with people and carrying a piece of paper, right, that tells them that they printed out on Monday, by the way, to say, okay, well, all right, you need 1 million mozzarella sticks. Let me go and look at my trusty PDF that I printed out on a piece of paper and get back to you because today's Thursday and this is old information. And so the cycle times on some of these, these processes and these sales were just tremendous, right? And so what we were able to do in that example was really work with the sales team and some of their kind of end customers to understand what do they need, right? If they need 1 million mozzarella sticks on Monday, right, because it's Thanksgiving, right, and they're going to run out and they need to restock the shelves by Monday morning, well, you have to be able to calculate that, forecast and anticipate that. And when you're making the sale, understand what do you even have in the inventory and what do you need to tell your manufacturers and your suppliers to actually go and do. And so we took all those processes, turned them up, and went from printing a PDF on Monday to developing a mobile app where the salespeople now had near real-time information around how much is actually in the warehouse, how much is in the hopper, how many can they manufacture if they were to sell 2 million instead of 1 million. And then correspondingly, the most important part of the equation is how much are you paying for 1 million mozzarella sticks, right? When you're talking 1 million mozzarella sticks, it's not just $2.99 or $3.99, however much you're buying them at Wendy's for, but it's economies of scale. So being able to have those negotiations on the fly with their customers while understanding, hey, maybe we have surplus, so maybe we should discount them on the fly and be able to sell more and move more product. And so having that information is really critical. And that's part of the whole kind of digital transformation process where it's not just, and I'm stealing some of my thunder on the following slides, but I'll kind of pause in a moment. But it's really thinking about that holistic capability and solution and what you ultimately need to end up doing. So that's a lot of what I continued to do when I was at Deloitte. A lot of mergers and acquisitions and consolidating technology capabilities to further support and bolster, why companies were buying other companies and making sure that they had continued synergies with their technology footprint. And so then kind of landed over with my current company with SEI Consulting and really continuing to do that in a more broad sense where I'm helping customers understand strategy through execution. So it's also talking to customers that maybe they think they need to do something, they may not know what. And so it's kind of that art of the possible. But then also, there's some customers that'll come to us and say, hey, here's what I know exactly what I want to do. They may not, but they think they do. And then it's kind of helping them navigate that and getting to that ultimate end solution as well. So hopefully that's helpful context. And if you want to got my QR code on here, if you want to look up my LinkedIn profile or get in touch. So the next kind of part of the conversation, and I don't know why my build didn't work because I kind of stole my thunder, but so I want to kind of open it up, and I've got a bunch of stickies on here, but I wanted to ask folks, like when you hear digital transformation, is that something does it resonate, does it not, like? And so folks, online or even in the room, like if you want to pepper in comments, like what is digital transformation to folks? Go ahead.
I guess just taking data and processing it.
Taking data and processing it. Okay. Anyone else? Let's build upon that. So taking data and processing it. So that's a really key component. So I'll kind of walk through some of my stickies here. So you'll see on here, there's things like software, technology projects, apps, right? We all use apps, can't live without them. Org redesign, which, by the way, when I was in Bentley, like we didn't have apps. Like I think I had a BlackBerry my senior year. And so before that, it was like, I still remember Professor Friedenberg, we're going to test this. I mean, they're talking about digital transformation. Like my freshman year, we had Palm Pilots.
Oh, you were in that class.
Yeah. So yeah, that class. And so we were kind of walking around trying to find Wi-Fi around campus and stuff, and with like little styluses. So it was, going from that to like having this little bad boy in my pocket is totally like, we're talking digital transformation. That's a whole different game right there. But yeah, apps are, obviously a big thing. Org redesign. Does that surprise anyone to see that on there from a digital transformation perspective? Maybe. Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. The reason why org redesign is on here is so when you think about a major change at a large company or even a smaller company, right? Sometimes you have functions or roles that people that, so just as an example on a project that I did once upon a time, where people actually put in paper timesheets, right? So they had hourly workers on staff that were inputting paper timesheets to support payroll processing. Well, when that went away and went digital, where people were either inputting it on a web browser or through a mobile app, unfortunately, the people that were processing those manual paper timesheets didn't really have a function anymore. It's not that those people weren't valuable, and that's a common misconception is that, digital, technology replaces people, right? Not really, right? It replaces functions and roles. And so part of that engagement was to help understand, all right, well, now you've got people that did all this manual stuff, right? Looking at pieces of paper, keying in stuff over and over again, right? Every week, hours and hours wasted. What can you do with those folks now that they're freed up? So org redesign is oftentimes an overlooked but really important thing as a part of digital transformation, because if you've got people who used to do something and now they don't have that thing to do, well, you can repurpose that productive time to do other valuable time, kind of value add time. Strategy, I mean, that's like the buzzword of all buzzwords, but strategy is obviously important in understanding. Oh, sorry, there's a comment here. Using a company. All right, so some of the folks. So a company gaining technology capabilities. Yep. So that's definitely digital transformation. Using technology to improve a company's capabilities. Taking technology and altering business processes to implement technology into it. As an example, using technology for accounting instead of manually inputting numbers. Perfect. Yeah. So that's exactly what we were just talking about, right? So these are all. But when we think about transformation, it's not just a one and done, right? It's a continual evolution, and that's where the strategy piece of it is key to understand. Like going back to the why, right? Like if I say like, hey, if there's a new app out, right, and we're all like, all right, well, why should I use it, right? That what the W word comes to mind right away. It's like, why am I going to use my time or waste my time to do this? And so understanding that strategy of the why we're doing something, not only near term, but kind of long term as well, is really important. Implementation, right? So with technology, oftentimes the word implementation comes up a lot, right? Which is the actual work we do to put the technology in place. Well, that's just a piece of the puzzle, right? Once you put the technology in place, well, who's going to use it? How are they going to use it? Do they know how to use it, right? All of these things are important when we think about these kind of digital transformations. So it's outside of that, just implementation by itself doesn't really kind of meet the boat. The other piece here is design thinking. Does anybody know what design thinking is? No? Anyone online? So design thinking is the practice of leveraging human-centered or process-centered design and understanding what it is that your goal and objective is. So if I say we're gonna, we're gonna turn this whole CIS sandbox into a virtual, like online, oh my God, we're gonna put it in the metaverse, right? We need to repurpose this physical space and we're gonna put it in the metaverse. And Professor Freidenberg's like killing me here.
We're doing it. We are.
Are we? Are we?
Yes.
Oh man, bad example. Okay.
A great example. Come back here in 2 weeks, we'll show you.
Perfect. Love it. All right. But in that example, right? Like when we think about design thinking, it's if you're going to leverage digital tools and technologies, how are you going to consume those? So thinking about the human aspect of things and understanding, okay, well, what are people actually going to do? Right? Like it's one thing to say, hey, I'm just going to build an app and put it out there and it's going to be great, versus saying, all right, I'm really going to focus on the clicks of how and where people are going to look for certain things like the menu or interacting or what the expectations are. Once you do this thing, then what happens next? And that design thinking is not really necessarily a core technology thing. It's more of a process and a conceptual thing, but it feeds directly into how you make that technology do what it needs to do. Let's see, tech projects, again, kind of similar to implementations. Cloud comes up a lot. I've talked to customers and they're like, yeah, we need to go to the cloud. We need to transform digitally. We need to go to the cloud. I love the cloud. What does the cloud mean to folks here? I'm just curious, kind of folks ask me what the cloud meant to me, and over 10, 15 years ago, I would feel like, is it raining today? I mean,
Somewhere you can upload your work on one device and be able to open it on another device.
Okay.
Without having to have this.
Yep. So kind of having that ubiquitous experience across devices and not worrying about the back end. Go ahead.
Just like an imaginary storage.
Yeah, I like that, imaginary storage. Yeah, the cloud has really helped, like really forced a separate storage system. Yep. Yeah, the cloud has really kind of changed the game, when we think about digital transformation and strategy, because one thing that it's done is it's allowed companies to say it's not my problem, if I were to make it very simple, right? Historically speaking, companies would be deploying their own servers, storage, compute, all of that, and they were responsible for all of it, all the way from plugging it into the wall, making sure it stayed cool, and ensuring that it ran properly, and having all the people and resources to make sure it ran properly. And with the cloud and kind of making it someone else's problem, whether that's Amazon or Microsoft or Google or whomever else, it really helps that focus to shift away from the underlying core operations of like the data center itself to the core functionality and that transformation aspect of technology. So that's really where cloud has become really important as well. Stakeholder mapping. That resonate? What does stakeholder mapping mean to folks?
Oh, I see.
How about stakeholders? Stakeholders is a pretty easy one, right? Stakeholder could be anywhere from somebody who owns a stock, right? That's a pretty simple, commonly understood one. Or just somebody who's involved with something, right? So when we think about any specific problem or solution that's going to impact someone, right, directly or indirectly, they can be considered stakeholders. And so when we think about digital transformation, understanding the universe of the stakeholder is really important, because a technology solution can be really disruptive. And so even if they're not direct users of the technology, it can be really, really detrimental to the solution, or just cause failure in a digital transformation if you're not considering all the players in the game. And we'll go into an example of something that specifically related to that. The last slide, the last sticky here, process improvement. This one's pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to ask you what process improvement is, but I think that's one thing that digital transformation is generally, regardless of how it's done, process improvement is a key component of digital transformation, where you're going from something that's potentially less efficient to more efficient by the use of technology. And that's often used in part of that definition as well. So pause there. Any other perceptions of what digital transformation is or is not? Okay. The one thing I will say, and I feel very passionately about this, is that digital transformation is not just a technology project, because I oftentimes in my work, I get customers that are like, we want to do a digital transformation and we want to put this technology in. And that's it. And that's one thing that I caution away from, is that it's not just a technology project. There's all this other stuff that goes around it to really make it successful. All right. So when I say there's all this other stuff around, a technology project in order to make it a true transformation, I wanted to kind of zoom out a level and just, provide a bit of an approach of what it is that we do when we talk about digital transformation. So it starts with identifying the problem or opportunity. So let's see. So Professor Freidenberg, I'm going to pick on you actually. So the opportunity to digitize or virtualize the CIS sandbox, where did that come from?
The opportunity to do it. I'm teaching a first year seminar course this year on living in the metaverse, and so we want to take this room as an example and see how we might recreate it in a VR setting.
Okay, that's cool. So that's the opportunity here for that digital transformation. Now, if we kind of go to the next step here, which is look out to understand the dependencies across technology, process, and organization. So for something like that, obviously you have to have stakeholders that are willing to participate. So I presume students are somewhat bought into the idea.
Students wanted the idea. We also need to identify what tools they would use and who had the skills to do it.
Yep.
And or the interest in learning how to do it.
Yep. And how they would do it.
Yeah, how they would do it. It's not just saying, let's do it this way, to figure out what approach to take.
Yep. Yep.
And then figure out, why are we doing this in the first place? What are we going to get out of it?
Yes. Have you figured that out yet?
No. Hopefully we'll get a good demo at open house.
Yeah.
And an opportunity to explore
what
it would look like to do what we do in the metaverse.
Yeah. Well, and I'm picking on you there, but like, that's sometimes technology comes before the why, and sometimes that can, like, if you're trying to try something out, that's totally fine. But if you're trying to tackle a specific problem and you don't understand the true why of it, that can quickly run you into problems between if you're trying to like boil the ocean and do too much, or you do something so totally narrow where you're actually not solving the problem of what you're trying to accomplish.
Or you're coming up with a solution, but you haven't figured out the problem.
Right, exactly. Yep, cart before the horse. And then once you figure that out, kind of the next natural thing is like, all right, how do we get started, right? All right, what do we need to actually do to make this happen? So I have not tried to virtualize anything myself, so I presume you've started to look into what are the immediate needs to actually virtualize this space. And that's not where it stops though, right? From a digital transformation perspective, that's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. And you say, all right, here are the kind of stepwise approach of what you're going to do to actually get this going. But then you have to figure out, all right, things like, all right, well, once we do that, do students need to be trained? Do students need to be, marketed to preach the benefits of why this is a good thing, why they should use this capability, that sort of thing. And then the last one, kind of a joke with the kangaroo icon, but like really just, you have to be ready to react and to whatever curveballs come your way, because when you're putting in new technology or something innovative, you're bound to encounter things that you didn't expect. And that's where it's really important to understand not only the technology piece of it, but all the other avenues of things that are involved with technology and the business and the functionality of what you're looking to do. Okay, so this is kind of the last slide I had, so we're doing very good on time. So before I dive into it, I'll pause to see if folks have any questions or comments. I don't see any comments in the chat, so I'll just kind of dive in. So I talked it a little bit. So why digital transformation isn't 2-day delivery? So we've all gotten so used to 2-day delivery. Amazon Prime is my best friend, and now they even get stuff to me the same day. In some cases, they get it to me in like 2 hours, and I'm just spoiled with that. To a point where I sometimes don't like them to come to my doorstep too frequently because my dog goes ballistic. That being said, when we think about technology and digital transformation, why isn't it why isn't it quick? Like, why can't we just put something in and expect it to work, right? Like, why can't we do that? So in this specific example, the goal was to get product samples to specific customers and increase the ability to sell product. This is not the mozzarella sticks example. So for this one, what we had to do is develop that roadmap, that strategic roadmap, and understand what it is that we were focused on and understand how those samples are going to go from literally having physical samples produced to how do we digitize that so customers can quickly and easily access them, whether it's through PDF or online, email, whatever, to be able to say, yep, I want this or I don't want this, and turn that into a product or a sample quickly. So as a part of this, what we had to do was really think about the concept and understanding, all right, well, it's not just saying, all right, you want a PDF of this, but you want to maybe, when we started talking to customers, we understood that they wanted to be able to customize it on their own a little bit, not just talk to the salespeople. So they wanted to be able to do some 3D modeling. So has anybody like built shoes on Nike.com? So that sort of thing, right? So it's like, all right, like I like this, but I want to see like how I can tinker with this and make it customized or make it my own. And in this case with samples, these customers wanted to be able to understand that and do limited production runs to be able to either then turn around and show those to their kind of indirect customers before they then made sales. So kind of the natural thing, in this example would be like, all right, cool. Like, let's go and get this on their website, right? Let's implement the 3D modeling solution on their website so their customers that can go and do this. Well, in this case, we started going down that path, but then we actually doubled back because one of the things I talked about stakeholder mapping earlier. So one of the things that we hadn't done when we talked to all the customers was we didn't talk to anyone that was involved with the supply chain. So what we found was, nope, all right, there we go. So there was a minor detail that was missed here. So what we found is that even if we started to improve that ability for customers to quickly see digital samples, play around with them, click, check out in the cart. Well, if that went from, okay, we get, I'm just making up these numbers, 100 a week to like thousands a week. Well, on their back end, their supply chain wasn't ready for that, and they weren't part of these conversations. So if we had kind of gone down this path and put this solution in place, that would have caused major business disruption and failure because they would have started getting tons of orders that they couldn't fulfill, and then pissed off clients and pissed off suppliers because they wouldn't be able to keep up with that, and that would just be totally detrimental. And they're trying to do something good and not really realizing that value. So what we had to do here in this case, when we caught wind of that, so to speak, is we kind of had to go back in the process and really circle back and pull in some additional capabilities to say, that hop, so to speak, right? Being able to react and change as the wind blows, and include additional data attribution and analytics that were provided to the supply chain so that they could bring on additional capabilities, sourcing and suppliers to ultimately, when that 100 goes to 1,000, 2,000 and beyond, that they could quickly and readily be able to satisfy those orders. So that's kind of the name of the game here with digital transformation, is that there's you Google digital transformation and you'll get a whole smorgasbord of like results, right? And everyone's got their own opinions of what it is and how it is. And the core of it is, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, which is it's leveraging technology to solve certain business problems or opportunities but really looking to evolve and enhance those business functions and processes, and in some cases, totally reinvent them. But in order to do that, again, the technology is perhaps the core of it, but there's all this other stuff that goes around it that you really need to take into consideration in order to make it really happen. So that's all I had. So I'll open it up to see if folks have questions really about anything, presentation or kind of the career trajectory. So I'm here for another half an hour, so I'm all yours.
Does it seem overwhelming when you're first given like a broad problem? You're supposed to split up into small minor details.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so the question was, is it overwhelming if you're given a broad problem and you have to then chunk it out? And in many cases, you know, that's how it starts, right? We'll have a customer that'll come to us and say, I have this problem. And then it's like my next natural step is to say, all right, well, let's break that apart, right? Let's really get to the root of like what you're trying to accomplish. Because sometimes it's just that initial problem that sticks in your mind and that's what you ask for. But there may be like 20 other things behind the scenes that you don't think to ask. And that's really critical. And not just with digital transformation, with any technology project, to really understand like what are the key requirements of what you're going to solve for. Because if you just stick to that one thing and you go down kind of with blinders on, more often than not, you get to the end and you do your kind of grand unveil, and your customer is going to be like, yeah, I didn't ask for that. It's like, no, that's exactly what you asked for. Well, no, I didn't mean that. I meant this, this, and that, right? And so it happens more often than you think, but that's really where it's important to be able to consult your clients and understand and really ask those pointed questions around, like going back to that kind of that design thinking of like, yeah, I mean, you know, Professor Freidenberg might say, hey, I want to virtualize this classroom, and you start asking, okay, well, why? Like, how do you think you're going to do that? Like, who's actually going to even use it, right? You know, is the metaverse the right spot, or should we go back to Second Life? That who knows if that even exists anymore? But really asking, you know, turning over all the stones is really important.
Coach online, please unmute. You can ask them questions too.
Oh man. Does anybody, so again, I don't really know where the curriculum is at these days or what classes you guys are taking. Have you run it like, as you're going through in your courses and your curriculum, like what sort of things have challenged you as you're learning about, you know, technology and how it relates to business?
I personally noticed that a lot of the times when people try to go and change it to like a digital world, they sometimes forget about the security aspect. Do you have experience with that personally?
Yeah. So the question was, you know, how does, I'm going to summarize your question. So basically, how does security play into, you know, all of these types of initiatives? And I'll tell you time and time again, it's kind of like top priority, right? Because especially, I mean, you go online, you hear about all these data breaches or hacks, and the thing that may not always be, you know, very apparent is that costs a lot of money, right? Like for example, when you know, just to kind of keep the higher ed theme, right? Like, so when UMass Lowell got hacked, right, and they had, you know, a ransom attack, right, and so they had to shut down their operations for like half a week, right? Canceled classes, like, you know, people not able to like actually, you know, conduct business. So there's a real cost to these things, and so anytime I have any new initiative or solution that a customer is putting in place, it's really understanding, all right, well, the data is like the fuel, right, of any solution, right? You don't really have a system without data, or metadata or inputs that are meaningful, and you have to figure out how do you protect that, right? And that's security ultimately. And so protecting that is figuring out, going back to stakeholder mapping, okay, who should have access to it? Who can use it? Who can input, right? All these things are really important. And also then thinking about like, all right, well, when you have data being transmitted or integrated from system to system, how do you secure that as well, right? When we start thinking about the cloud, and you're talking about data moving like all over the place, right? Like within your own environments, to other environments across the world, potentially to space, right? Like, you know, like, and that's where you start introducing points of vulnerability. And that's scary to a lot of people because vulnerability means risk. Risk is generally bad. And you want to minimize that because if you realize an event or an incident, it goes back to, you know, business interruption, costs money, tarnishing your reputation. And so all of these things are really important to consider as a part of kind of digital solutions and transformation, leveraging technology. That's a great question. I'll say what one last question I'll have is you know, what is technology that has really disrupted or been transformative in your lives?
Yeah, I know it.
Anything.
Tracking.
Tracking?
Yeah.
Phone tracking. Okay.
I don't like it.
You know, like, I kind of want to dive into that a little bit, but I'm like cautious that I don't want to.
Yeah, I can relate to that, because like,
Yeah.
if you have, see like the thing like from like the Super Bowl last year, like how the guy like snuck into the stadium, like
Yeah.
using an air tag, like you could realistically track anyone anywhere.
Yeah, tracking has become a very kind of hot button item, obviously between like all this crazy stuff that's been going on with the eye tags. But also, you know, like tracking is so pervasive, like where has anyone been like in a store, right? And you get like a text, kind of promotional text or something related to something that you kind of recently walked by or something like that.
Or like when I look something up online, and then like I go on like a different website and I get an ad. For
Yeah.
the thing I look back, would that like be considered somewhat kind of
Totally. Yeah. And it's not just physical sensors, right? It's also attribution, right? Attribution is another mechanism of tracking, right? And that actually is effectively how Google makes money,
Yeah,
right?
you search for something and then you get ads for it. It's 20 days.
Yep. Or you talk about it, right? I've got Google Homes all over my house, and my wife will kill me if I buy another one this Black Friday. But you know, like it's always listening, right? And it's that information that it's capturing is being translated to attribution, right? So if I go into my Google data, like I can find keywords for like all the random stuff in the last week that I've been talking about buying because it's been listening, right? And so it knows like, oh, hey, Bhavik is looking to buy, you know, dog collars and so on and so forth. And so I pull out my phone and I'm like, that attribution is serving up those ads. And then you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword because in some cases that's helpful because I want to know about deals about dog collars, but then it's can be annoying or like, yeah, it's kind of creepy too, right? Like, no, it's just this. It's this weird world we live in, but that's kind of the reality we also have. And going back to the security and privacy aspect of things, you have to play that tricky balance, right? Of how much you put stuff out there versus like how closed you want to keep it, because it's kind of data in, data out, right? I mean, if I were to turn off like my location on my phone, well, okay, then I can't use GPS unless I turn it back on. You know, in some cases it's helpful because, or I actually need to, because there's certain technology or devices that require the location to be able to function properly. So it's really important. Like I don't think anyone's really solved it yet. And it's, you have to be very mindful of your settings that you're enabling or disabling as well. But it's become a pretty hot topic in retail, where there's things. Has anyone heard of beacons? No. Okay, so they're effectively they use low energy Bluetooth. What's that?
We have some here somewhere.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, back there. We used them to. We put these little things like in places that when you walked in, your Bluetooth phone app would right as a single permit, then it would push you a website about what was wrong with the place.
Yep, yeah, it gives you an alert. So it's used a lot in retail environments where like, a lot of folks just keep that setting enabled because either you don't know about it or you may not think to disable it. So you walk by, right? There might be, you go to Best Buy, for example, right? Walk through, you're in like the laptop section, you might get an alert that say, hey, Lenovo's are on sale, boom. Okay, cool, oh, cool, like, yeah, so, or it could be, the hell, like, how did that happen, right? I mean, it's, but technology is everywhere and it's constantly being, leveraged in various ways and evolving. This is great. Any other kind of technologies that folks are wondering about or have questions about?
How would you interpret?
Trying to think if there's other stuff that's popped up recently.
So for this,
Like,
there's supposed to be like a.
less technology, but like readily like access to
The first
genetic
step I would do is make sure
information
we just go and talk
and like
about
DNA testing, and you can like, there's a lot more information about it now.
Yeah. So you mean like just like the ability, like how like fast it's done now, I guess? So that's an interesting area because it's fueled by technology, right? So the comment was around genetic testing and sequencing and that sort of thing. And so with cloud technology and just emerging compute and analytical capabilities, you can do things a lot faster than you could 10 years ago, right? So think about if you have like terabytes or petabytes of data, right, that you've generated. If you couldn't process that data, well, it's then not really, I mean, it's great that you have it, but you can't do anything meaningful with it as far as like analysis or, running machine learning algorithms or doing any data science and against that. Now that there's all this additional horsepower that you can get at really a snap of a finger, right? Because pull your data into any given cloud platform. And then if you have the ability to, write queries or algorithms or modeling, you can do a lot with that. But then also at the same time, you can create technology that is always on, right? And always learning and doing more with the data that you put into it. So, it's really interesting. I mean, I'll just personal example is like, has anybody heard of Embark? No, so it's a company where you can buy a DNA test for your dog. Clearly I'm obsessed with my dog, right? So you do a little swab of their mouth, send it back to them, and they sequence that data and they tell you like, we adopted him. So they told us like he's a German beagle and a pit mix, and they also told us where he's from, where his like and over time, the more and more people that have their dogs do it, they actually can tell you like where their siblings live and stuff. And so it's just mind blowing, right? And then it's like this data is continuing to evolve and enabling different things. But then when you start putting a business lens on that also, now it's okay, well, going back to a few different kind of themes that we talked about, which are like data privacy, security, et cetera. Like, okay, well, now I'm starting to get targeted because I have put that information out there. And so that company now can market to me, right, around certain things and that sort of thing. So it's really, it's exciting and complex and all sorts of things all at the same time. This is great. Any other questions, comments?
If not, thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Please scan the QR code or fill out the survey, so we know you're here. Also, Topics and Tech is a Bentley Plus program, so if you're involved in that, depending on about it in FDS, you can apply this toward your projects for Bentley Plus. Tomorrow, if you're looking for another presentation to come to, Caitlin Columbi, who graduated from Bentley about 10 years ago, and now works at LinkedIn, is going to be presenting on how LinkedIn can help you with your career. That's entirely online, or you can come here and watch it with folks too, but she's going to be zooming in from California. And at 5 o'clock, same Zoom group as this one. She's going to talk about LinkedIn stuff. And then 2 weeks from yesterday, on the 29th, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, the CI Sandbox is having an open house at 2 o'clock. the president's coming, the provost is coming, the deans are coming, hopefully you're gonna come too, and then you can actually see our sandbox and members and other projects that civil teachers here are working on. So stop by, you don't have to stay all the time, but stop by and see some of the things that are going on here that you might find interesting, especially if you're gonna take science courses in the future, you see some projects that
So.
some students in courses that you might take later on are actually doing. So it's worth a visit. Also, we will have a couple of giveaways, so you can get your share of sandbox swag and other good things too. Bhavik, thank you.
Very good. No, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks everybody for coming again. Please fill out the survey if you have any survey.
Any images for your website?